Talofalava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Swiswiki. Coming up,
the impacts are not just historical facts, but contemporary challenges.
Marshall Islands marks 71 years of Remembrance Day. Also,
we have grown a lot this year. This time we've got 8 teams playing, 4 youth, 2 girls, 2 boys.
the Kilikiti competition returns to Wellington and the largest Kapahaka festival comes to a close. The president of the Marshall Islands says her people continue to face the impacts of US nuclear weapons testing 7 decades since the last bomb was detonated. The country has marked 71 years since the most powerful nuclear weapons test ever conducted were unleashed. Hilda Heine says the Pacific Islands has a complex history of nuclear weapons testing, but the impacts are very much a present-day challenge.
When I was just a young girl, our islands were turned into a big laboratory to test the capabilities of weapons of mass destruction, biological warfare agents, and unexploded ordnances. The impacts are not just historical facts, but contemporary challenges.
Meanwhile, National Nuclear Commission Chairperson Ariana Tibon-Kilmer spoke with Lydia Lewis about the impact she's seen and her hopes for the future on the sidelines of the last Pacific Islands Forum Leaders meeting in Tonga.
I am a direct descendant of survivors of the nuclear weapons testing program. My family were test subjects under a program called Project 4.1, which was the top secret medical lab study on the effects of radiation on human bodies. And this program was conducted without consent from any of the Marshallese people, and for a number of years they were being studied and monitored and sometimes even flown out to the States and displayed as a showcase to the superiors' colleagues at the time.
What stories did you hear of the impacts of that? How did that impact generation after generation?
I actually didn't hear any stories. I think the history and the trauma associated with what happened to my family, as well as many other families in the Marshall Islands, this history was barely spoken of, as the Marshallese people did not learn about the nuclear legacy until 2019, when it was first incorporated into the public school system. Prior to that, we were only required, as a student that was born and raised in the Marshall Islands, I was only required to attend the annual Nuclear Victims Remembrance Day ceremony, where we would go there, and this is the anniversary of the March 1st Bravo shot, and we would go to where the government was hosting the ceremony and listen to the speeches by the survivors and by our government. However, because I was just a young girl at the time as a student, I did not pay attention to those speeches, and so I realized that there was a huge gap there because our students weren't interested in long speeches. And so at the National Nuclear Commission, after it was established, we incorporated it into the public school system, and we're also teaching the nuclear legacy through arts and other ways that would be more appropriate for the students to learn.
Now, going forward, what does your work entail? What is your hope for the next generations? And I guess when you come to these big meetings like this, what would you like the other Pacific leaders and other Pacific nations to acknowledge?
I would like the other Pacific leaders and the Pacific nations to acknowledge that the threat of nuclear weapons is so serious and it shouldn't be taken lightly. What happened to the Marshallese people is something that we would not wish upon any other Pacific Island country or any other person in humanity.
Guam at the moment, for example, is the US's largest storehouse of nuclear weapons. Has the US learnt from this?
I don't know. I can't answer to that. I'm not sure. what the U.S.'s point of view is, and I'm not sure what their agreement is with Guam.
What is going to happen going forward? Are there any initiatives in the pipeline? There was, talk of studies and things like that, but I mean, in terms of impacts for survivors, is there need for more hospitals to be built in the Marshall Islands, or what is the need? Because I know in French Polynesia, cancers are still massive issue, and they want better hospital services. What is needed now in Marshall Islands?
What is needed now in the Marshall Islands is comprehensive health care. Although the people are owed billions of dollars in compensation, it's hard to put a price on a person's life. And a lot of those patients that were in the Nuclear Claims Tribunal awards list have already passed away. And I think what we can do now is provide comprehensive health care to these people to ensure that they get the best quality medical care possible.
How does that relate to the US's current relationship with the Marshall Islands?
The U.S. actually funds 2 programs where they're supposed to provide care, especially to the exposed communities, but the RMI believes that the programs that they have in place are inadequate to address the needs of these communities.
Can you give me an example of the inadequacy? What are people going through? Like, what are they missing out on? What are they calling for?
The biggest one is that we don't have an oncologist on island. We don't have a cancer center on island, although there are many people who are either having to fight the battle of cancer or have already passed away from cancer, and the rates are alarming. We still don't have someone on island to care for these people, and this is also a result of the big out-migration of Marshallese to the United States to seek health care.
So are people being displaced from their communities now because of this?
Yes.
And Lydia Lewis put those questions to the then US Deputy Secretary of State, Kurt Campbell, at the time.
The Marshall Islands claims the US still owes Marshallese people billions to address the nuclear legacy. An apology has also not been issued by the US. How can the US expect to get closer with the Pacific and constrain China's influence without addressing issues within its own Pacific territories?
The United States, over decades, has committed billions of dollars to the damages and the rebuilding of the Marshall Islands, and we have engaged actively in diplomacy around health issues, around sustainability. And you will note that the recently concluded COFA agreement indeed addresses issues that are central to the needs of the Marshallese people. So I think we understand that history carries a heavy burden, and we are doing what we can to support the people in the COFA states, including the Marshallese Islanders more generally. I will just note to you directly that when President Biden hosted the leaders of the Pacific in the White House last year and the year before, he took special care to acknowledge the terrible sacrifices and the tragedy of some of the issues in the Pacific, including in the Marshall Islands.
Kilikiti was back on at the Basin Reserve over the weekend. The sounds and colours of the Pacific were on display as the Pacific community in Wellington came out to support family and friends who were on the field. Moira Tuileipa Taylor went along and compiled this report.
That was Team Nainai College expressing their joy at beating St Patrick's Silverstream on Saturday. It's only the second edition of Kilikiti at the Basin, with history being made at the iconic ground during the inaugural tournament last year. Here's Cricket Wellington's Diversity and Inclusion Lead, Frankie Stewart.
It's our second year of running the day. We have grown a lot this year. This time we've got 8 teams playing, 4 youth, 2 girls, 2 boys, a women's game and a men's game.
Frankie says it's great to see women and youth take part in this year's event. She says getting young people involved this year was easier with support from the Wellington Samoa Kilikiti Association.
They have a KPL comp, So they've had a lot of youth players in there as well. So I think it's really growing with the youngsters, and I understand that is a real driver especially for the Samoan Kilikiti Association, as some of the youth haven't been playing so much in recent years. So yeah, keen to kind of revive that youth age group.
The KPL she was referring to is the Kilikiti Premier League. She says the success of the event was also thanks to the support from various sponsorships.
Without those people financially supporting it, we couldn't make it happen. And then also we have our awesome organising committee. So we're 7 of us, 3 women, 4 men from all across Wellington, and they are just integral to making this happen and making sure it's done in a culturally respectful way.
As mentioned, this year 2 all-women teams took part, and Teresa Lealofi, captain of the Tila Whaenga Titans, says it was great to be included.
It's a really monumental kind of occasion today, especially for the women. We weren't given this platform last year, so to have this opportunity this year is really exciting and felt amongst all of the women.
Celia Finau is the captain of Taema Warriors. She says it's great seeing young people turn up.
So good to see our kids out there enjoying the game. Because, they play rugby and other sport apart from cricket until now. It's something different for them, which is really interesting, and I'm so proud of some of our young ones that have actually joined.
Nef Lucy Leao, who took part in the inaugural event last year, says it was really easy to get the community on board.
As soon as everyone hears the Basin Reserve, because it's such a historical ground, everyone just goes, man, I want to be there, and be a part of it. And I think just being able to lift our Pasifika communities up in this big stage, we don't often get to see that. And man, I think everyone just jumps on board and wants to support and get behind us. So, and not just the Pasifika, but all our other nationalities or cultures that are supporting. So yeah, it's cool.
Nap, who played for the Hutt Valley All-Stars this year, says the community support for the event has been awesome.
It's just an amazing event to see community come together, our culture, shining on the big stage. So, it's amazing, and seeing the public come and support. So, yeah, I'm finding it really good, really good.
Another first at the Basin this year was seeing the flags of Samoa, Tonga, American Samoa, Tokelau, New Zealand, Fiji, Niue and Tino Rangatiratanga flying at the Basin, representing all the different nationalities who took part in the event. Kilikiti, which is the Samoan word for cricket, was introduced to Samoa by Christian missionaries, but Samoans have adapted it to suit themselves, including a bat moulded after the 3-sided Samoan war club, the Lapa Lapa.
The largest kapahaka festival in the world, Te Matatini, came to an end on Saturday, and the organisation behind the events are yet to decide where the next competition will be held. Around 15,000 people went to the final day of Te Matatini o Te Kāhui Maunga at the Pukekura Bowl of Brooklands in New Plymouth, packing out the bowl to watch the top 12 teams in the country battle it out. The week-long festival was filled with fierce competition and breathtaking performances. And someone that's performed on the stage during the week was Turia Schmidt-Peke. I caught up with Turia, who began by sharing her whakapapa.
Kia ora, talopalava. I'm from Pare Waikato, Ngāti Haua, and Pare Hauraki, Ngāti Tamatera, both in Waikato. And on my dad's side, I'm from Whanga and Safotu in Sawai Samoa.
What was it like performing at Te Matatini? What was the atmosphere like?
It was really cool. It was really different. Usually I perform, I've gotten used to performing with one of my sisters, but this year my older sister worked for the social media team for Te Matatini, and my younger sister had her first stand with Angitu, which is another Auckland group. So there was a little bit of competitiveness there. But I also stood with my younger cousin Tanumia. She had her first Matatini with us, so that was really cool to experience it with her. I mean, it was a long week, but Taranaki was so beautiful. They were so well prepared, and the whole festival was amazing. And there were a bit of doubts on social media before we went down there about the stage setup and all of that, but it was amazing. It was such a good venue, and Yeah, long but great week down in New Plymouth.
How many times have you performed at the festival?
Oh, I think my first matatini I done in Tauranga when I was 15 in 2009. Then I'd done 13, 15, 16, 17, 19. This is my 7th matatini.
Oh, you're a pro now.
my 7th one. So, yeah, it was really good. I loved it.
What group did you perform with, and did you guys come away with any prizes?
I've only ever stood with my Raupira team, Ngā Tūmanako, where a team made up of ex-students of our kura, Te Kura Kapa Māori Honi Waitisi Marae, based in Glen Eden, Auckland. So we all just ex-students of theirs to kind of keep us together and keep all our songs and haka alive. So we were lucky enough to place 3rd overall this year, which was really, really cool. We made it to the finals day, and yeah, I think we got a couple of things, but I'm not sure. The main thing we always strive to get is te mita o te reo, which is like the language and the diction in that. That's the one we always kind of want to get. So we were lucky enough to get that equal with a few other groups, including Angitu, another Auckland-based group. But yeah, the competition was really, really huge this year. Like the bar and quality of haka, I think, is just out of this world now.
What personal impacts has Te Matatini had on your cultural identity?
For me, since leaving school, we're a full immersion Māori language kura, and you're just used to speaking Māori to everyone and always being in an environment where everyone is speaking Māori. I think once you leave school and you go to university and work, it's a bit different. I'm lucky enough that I still work in Māori media, and I work for a Māori language show, Pukana. So I'm still surrounded by people who speak Māori, but it's not the same for all of my kapahaka mates that are in the group. So it's really good for us to kind of keep that together. We go to tangihanga together as a kapa, so we can represent our kura and our hapori, our community. So I guess in that aspect, we also the good thing I think about kapahaka is that you learn a lot of history and a lot of genealogy and everything like that through haka and songs. It's more of a fun way rather than just kind of sitting there and listening to people talk, because I'm not really good at that. I've got a very short attention span. So kapahaka is a nice way where you can kind of do physical things to show what you're talking about as well. So I think that's great. And I guess it's a lot like Siva Samoa and all of that, My little sister and I have just joined a Siva class this year out in New Lynn every Wednesday, kind of just to ease us into getting to know more of our Samoan side and our Samoan culture. So, because we grew up very strong on our Māori side, so it's just kind of finding that balance now as adults.
Yeah, I'm hearing that in our conversation. So how do you navigate your identity as Samoan Māori? Do you find that it's challenging learning one side of your culture, or do you feel that you're equally in tune with both parts of your culture?
Yeah, no, we definitely grew up real strong on our Māori side because we went to a full immersion school. So we went through kohanga reo, kura kaupapa, but Māori is our first language, and we don't know how to speak Samoan. We've gone back to Samoa a couple of times, but my grandparents were a part of that generation, that moved over from Samoa and kind of just went almost a full Palangi way. But I think as kids, we couldn't help that we didn't grow up on our Samoan side, but as adults, there's kind of no excuse, you got to want the change and kind of go for it yourself. So we started with classes, Samoan language classes last year, doing a Siva class this year, and we're honestly hoping to move to Samoa for a few months next year, because I don't think there's any better way than just to live in Samoa and be surrounded by the language and culture. So while we definitely, we're not the best Māori speakers or anything like that, but we know that language and culture aspect a lot. We're very strong in that side. So it's just finding that balance and not really making any excuses for it. I do sympathise with people who didn't get to grow up with their Māori language or Samoan language, but I'm 31, no kids. It's kind of up to me now to do that. So, and there's so many things that you can do. There's so many programs and classes out there. It's just to find them and commit yourself, I guess.
Will you be performing at the next Te Matatini?
Oh, absolutely. If my team makes it through the regionals again, definitely keen to do it again. And hopefully more of my mates and more of my family stand with me the next round.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā sui fua.